Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone present here. I am Saurabh Sonwani, an early career representative of iLEAPS and a convener of this program. With me, co-convener Pallavi Saxena and Samina Shamsuddin are scientific steering committee member of iLEAPS and iLEAPS IPO respectively. We welcome you all in our ninth episode of Drive with iLEAPS on the Wheel of Science, a global interview series. Today, our guest is Professor Maharaj A. Pandit. He is a Ni Kong Si Distinguished Visiting Professor in Residential College for National University of Singapore and Professor and Dean at Jindal School of Environment and Sustainability, OP Jindal Global University, India. However, before introducing him, I would like to say a few words about iLEAPS. iLEAPS stands for Integrated Land Ecosystem Atmosphere Process Study. It is a global research project of Future Earth. It seeks to provide an understanding about how interacting physical, chemical, and biological process transport and transform energy and matter through the land-atmosphere interface. Like other Future Earth global research project, iLEAPS is a network to link iLEAPS scientists to key societal challenges related to health, biodiversity, climate, food, and fuel security, and ultimately linked to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. It promotes scientific excellence through developing international science initiatives that are multidisciplinary to bring together the modeling community with satellite, experimental, and field observational experts, and through enabling communication and networking across the international science community. It facilitates such initiative by acting as a communication hub and coordinator of worldwide scientific research in the field of ecosystem atmosphere exchange and the impact of those exchange on key societal issues. Another very important initiative of iLEAPS is promotion of leadership in science through capacity building in developing countries as well as through their early career scientist network by hosting workshop, ensuring timely and relevant science to be available through their website and training program. Recently, we have conducted Earth and Environment Series 2021-2022 targeting South Asia. Then after we have organized iLEAPS Light Conference 2022, iLEAPS OSPRUX Conference 2023. We have also successfully conducted Global Curriculum Series 2022-2023. We are also actively convened several sessions in EGU, SRI from past several years. Recently, we have also conducted a session in IGAC and SOLAS 2024. So as we know that there are several challenges faced by researchers in the different field of the science and technology. Thus, a motivation is always required to derive the enthusiasm to carry forward the research. The key to motivation is to follow the footstep and journey of renowned and esteemed researcher and academician that help to set a remarkable goal. This understanding has been behind the present program to provide researchers, especially the early career researcher, an opportunity to imbibe knowledge, inspiration, and zeal to conduct their research in a direction that is fruitful and welfare for the science and society. With this brief introduction of iLEAPS, it is a time to start our program with our guest, Professor M.K. Pandit, who has had a remarkable journey in the field of ecology, environmental conservation, climate change, sustainability, and science policy. So now, here I would like to request Samina to introduce Professor M.K. Pandit. Samina, over to you.
Thank you, Saurabh. Hi, Professor. I'm so happy to introduce you to this talk, this interview series. So I got a detailed bio about Professor. Professor Maharaj Krishnan Pandit is a scholar in the field of Himalayan ecology, environmental conservation, and sustainability. He is currently the NG and Kong Si Distinguished Professor at the National University of Singapore. He is the former Dean, Jindal School of Environment and Sustainability, and held various leadership roles at the University of Delhi, including founding CEO of the Institution of Eminence, Dean Research Council, Dean Faculty of Science, Head Department of Environmental Studies. Just getting into some personal details, born to Gopinath and Gunvati Chanda, calling name Pandit of Mahind, Anantnag, Kashmir, he completed his early schooling in his village. Pandit came in contact with his mentor, Dr. Virendra Kumar, an eminent Himalayan botanist, as an undergraduate and earned a BSc honors degree. Dr. Kumar mentioned him in field biology and made him a part of his research team. He subsequently joined Professor C.R. Babu at the University of Delhi, where he earned his PhD in the field of conservation biology. For his outstanding contribution in the field of Himalayan ecology and the environment, Professor Pandit was appointed Radcliffe Fellow at the Harvard University from 2015 to 2016 and held the position of Adjunct Full Professor, University of Rhode Island, USA from 2016 till present. Professor Pandit was a visiting scientist at ETH, Switzerland, and summer faculty at Vienna University, Austria in 2001. He has been invited to deliver special or key lectures at some of the best universities across the globe, including Harvard University, USA, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, USA, Tufts University, USA, University of Toronto, Canada, National University of Singapore, etc. Honors. In 2022, Professor Pandit was elected to the American Academy of Arts and Science for Ecology and Evolution. He was elected Fellow of the International Science Academy in 2016, the National Academy of Science India 2015, and the Linnean Society of London 2001. Pandit was awarded Hardy Fellowship in Life Sciences in 2015 to 2016 at the Harvard University and the Radcliffe Explanatory Seminar Award at the Harvard University. Pandit is included in Stanford University's 2023 list of the world's most influential scientists. Taking a bit in detail to his research, Pandit's research centers around exploring the genetic and genomic factors influencing plant rarity and invasiveness, along with how land use and climate change affect human livelihoods, ecosystems, biodiversity, rivers, and water resources. He has investigated the impact of dams on Himalayan biodiversity and local communities. He is an internationally well-regarded scientist for his research. His works have appeared in the most prominent journals, including Nature, Science, Journal of Ecology, New Phytologist, Bioscience, Conservation Biology, Ambio, and Biodiversity and Conservation. His book, Life in the Himalaya, An Ecosystem at Risk, published by the Harvard University Press, examines the connections among geological, climatic, social, cultural, and biological elements, and advocates a balance between economic growth and the Himalayas' carrying capacity. Listing a few of his invited talks in 2019 and 2023, Professor Pandit delivered public lectures under the Enki and Kongsi Award in Singapore. He also delivered the prestigious Birbal Sahni Memorial Lecture in 2023 at the Foundation Day of the Birbal Sahni Institute of Paleosciences in Lucknow. Thank you very much, Professor Pandit, for agreeing to be part of this interview series. And we are really glad, and it's a great honor to welcome you to this series.
Thank you. Honored.
Thank you, Samina, and good evening, Professor Pandit. Now we are firmly going to start with the interview. And first, let us start with your career journey. So please, it would be great if you can mention the important aspect about your education, career path, and collaboration that you had that helped you to achieve so many recognition and position that you have served in the different university. So, yeah.
Well, thank you, Samina, Pallavi, and Saurabh. Thank you for having me. You've already read a detailed account of what I have done, but briefly, let me tell you that I had my primary and high school education in a village in Kashmir Valley. And that was a government school, and that was the only school. After that, I shifted to Delhi, where I completed my bachelor's degree, honors in botany, and later I joined for PhD at the same university. But talking about the career trajectory, let me say that though Samina has already mentioned, that during those formative years, when I was an undergrad student, it was by chance that I met my teacher. He was that time at Zagreb College, where I think you are already there. So I met him. So he became my mentor. Now, generally speaking, in India, undergrad teachers in colleges, they generally do not carry out research at least that time. But he was different. He had a lab. In fact, he had 2 labs, and those labs had a remarkable library, and that library would have everything from history to literature to music, art, and whatever. So therefore, after the classes, I would get into his library, and then I got. But beyond the class, he sort of, he took me under his tutelage, and that's the career journey that started at young age. I was just in first year of a 3-year BSc, and that laid the foundation. So he taught me something which generally you don't teach students in the classroom. So it was beyond the classroom learning. And in the late 80s, when I joined Professor Babu at Delhi University, at that point of time, I was, of course, working for my PhD, which was on endangered plant species, Himalayan plant species, and I chose the most difficult area. I honestly had no idea that what am I going, because that time, even today, going deep into the mountain and forests of Arunachal Pradesh, it's not a. So I wasn't aware till I reached there. Then it involved days and days of travel on foot, walking through leech and snake infested forests to reach my plant, because it was an endemic plant and was endemic. It was a very narrow endemic. That means that it's in a very small area called Mishmi Hills. So it's almost a couple of hillocks. It's only found there and nowhere else. Anyway, so that is how. And in fact, when I reached there, to reach even the district headquarters at that point of time was a challenge. It was a big challenge. Anyway, I got lucky in the sense that when the local district magistrate, that time there was only one car in the entire district, and that was district magistrate's car. This is late 80s, much late 80s, say 88, 89, something like that. So they were pleasantly surprised. The DFO, the district divisional forest officer and divisional magistrate, they were rather appreciative of me, not of my research work, but of my courage that this guy has chosen to be here. But then I have no regrets. In fact, in 2020, when I wrote that the second paper, worldview paper for Nature, that time that work became handy, and the editor asked me that to write exactly what I had written to her in the email. So that should be the opening sentence. So the tougher challenge you accept, the tougher you get, and sweeter are its rewards. So I was anyway, to cut the long story short, I finished my PhD, but at the same time, my work with Dr. Virendra Kumar, which was very different than what I was doing for my PhD, though I joined the two, I got interested in bigger things, asking bigger questions. Though I was working for endangered species, one endangered species called Mishmi Tita or Coptis Tita in the Himalaya, that too in Arunachal Pradesh Himalaya. But then I started asking myself a question, that why do some species become endangered? Later on, I slightly extended it, that why do some species become endangered while others turn invasive? Okay, so even after 40 long years, I must say 35 long years, I am trying to solve that problem bit by bit, even today. And I think these are some profound questions. And, working on these questions, try to answer fundamental questions in conservation biology or biology itself. That, why do, when we go ahead in detail, I will tell you in more details that what did I ultimately find. In fact, there was a professor at Department of Botany who I showed some of my slides at that point in time, because its chromosome number was not known. So I was investigating, and it was very difficult to get its root tips. It was not shedding seed. So I used a leaf tip method anyway. So anyway, when I showed to him, he said, "Oh, you know what, Pandit, you got a gold mine." I said, "Gold mine, yeah." Anyway, so this is the kind of sum and substance of my almost cutting teeth in research, and the remarkable, support of my teachers and a number of other people. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Professor, for sharing your very bright career journey and education path. Somehow we have also got chance to interact with Professor Babu sometime, and even in our Earth Environment Day series. So that was also a very delightful experience, and thank you so much. And I think there is so many things to explore in this interview. And further, we want to know that what are the recent research work in which you are working right now. So it would be great if you can brief about them, its importance in the science and society.
Okay. Well, as I said before, that I started asking bigger questions. So I had to, tell myself that, one, of course, if I am searching for the reasons behind why species get endangered, or why species become invasive, then I must have I must develop a two-way approach to it. So kind of a dual approach. One is that, are there any intrinsic constraints, more likely genetic constraints on species, which make them vulnerable to rarity and endangerment? And similarly, in case of invasives, are there intrinsic endowments? Like in case of endangered species, they may have constraints. Similarly, do invasive species have intrinsic endowments that make them turn invasive? So that was one. Second was the extrinsic problems. What was the role of man in either bringing out extinctions or bringing out or converting species into invasive species? So this kind of dual kind of approach, I sort of I approach this issue from this dual angle. Now, if you have to make a bigger splash in sciences, you have to attack a bigger problem. And to attack a bigger problem, you must have a lot of data, because you can't be working on one species and then based on one, two, three, four, five species and then making generalizations. Because if you go to big journals, they will say that it is speculative, it is true, this thing, that thing. At that point of time, something again serendipitous. In my life, there is a lot of serendipity, is very, very common. So serendipitously, I sort of it was more of a moment where I felt that, why don't I look at the genetic kind of factors of these endangered species? So at that point of time, Dr. Virendra Kumar had finished writing that voluminous book called Chromosome Numbers of Indian Plants of Indian Subcontinent. So I picked it up, and then I also picked up the 3 volumes of Endangered species data from Indian subcontinent, and started now 3 volumes here, 2 volumes here. I'm trying to match and mix now that ultimately I got roughly about 108 endangered species data from that book. Okay. And then sort of that's how I wrote that's how I said wrote the first paper when I did phylogenetic autocorrelation and things like that. And at that point of time, I got this. It was such a surprise for me that endangered species are essentially diploid, and all the invasive species are polyploid. Perfect correlation. And now, the moment I sent it, and I was just before this, I was talking with Samina for a short while. That evolutionary ecology research journal generally tells you who are your reviewers. Bill Kunin of Leeds University was one of my reviewers who had done a lot of work in rarity, and Doug Saltis, who is a great grandfather figure in evolutionary genetics, he was in the sense that so he was another one, though I don't know whether I should reveal that, but it's okay. And so for almost 2 years I kept on trying to tell them that yes, I have this story. The chief editor was very happy that yes, this is the story, but then he said, all right, yes, you have the data, you have the correlation, you have everything, the data is very robust, but in your title, please don't say in search of pattern among endangered species. Say of Indian subcontinent. At that point of time, the chief editor was very angry. He said, this cannot happen. When North Americans or Europeans, or when they find something in their regions, they don't write in Europe, they don't write in England, they don't write in, they just say something. So I will publish this. So he took a call on this. However, though he wrote to me an acceptance letter, with the acceptance letter, he said, Raj, it is good that this paper has been accepted. This will be on the pages of evolutionary ecology research. But if you want to escape criticism, greater criticism, then you must now search for these patterns globally. Now, these are important stories in the life of a scientist. Same day, literally. And I had shifted to Singapore at that time. Same day, I started looking for data for globally endangered species and globally. Anyway, it was then thousands of species, both in that. And then I sort of I wrote to Bill Kunin that if he would participate in this, he said he will be very happy. One of his postdoctorals that time, he is at CEH now, Michael Pocock, he invited him. He said that he's very good in modeling and things like that. And this paper, though it took us 2.5, 3 years, because it was back-breaking. So hard work. It was back-breaking, collecting thousands of species data globally. And we submitted it to Journal of Ecology, which was a big leap for me at that point of time. So, and in sharp, I think within less than a month, we got acceptance. And the day that paper was online, I got an email from one of the editors of Nature, Natasha Gilbert, saying that, oh damn, why didn't you tell us this? And so would you? I want to do a story on it. So would you answer some questions? Sure, she did an interview, and she published a 2-page, article based on our article. That it became a big kind of a story. That and the title of that work was that ecologists have found genomic clues to rarity and endangerment. So from a small, kind of an idea which started with the Indian subcontinent, now I have a global appeal of that. Now that science is appealed globally. Subsequently, I took it. I wanted to see that what is happening at the genome size. Is genome size also correlated? And fantastic. So again, I went to this with data set to Mike Pocock, and there was another gentleman, and we published that work. It went still further. It went to New Phytologist and New Phytologist. So these laid some. At that point of time, Professor Paintel was our vice chancellor. In fact, Delhi University vice chancellor. He was himself a very well-known scientist, and that to a geneticist. In fact, he came to my lab. He said, "Raj, kyun tum apna ye polyploidy ke piche? Why are you wasting your time? This is a dead horse." And I had promised him. I said, "Deepak, look here. I will make this horse alive. Dead horse will speak." He said, "All right." He was like that. He said, "All right, do." And when that commentary came in Nature, he was the first one at 7:30 in the morning to call on my mobile. He said, "Raj, I was wrong. You have won this battle. Congratulations. You have done us proud." Now, it's not about me. It's about the way you are enthusiastic about an idea which you have picked up during your maybe undergrad days or graduation days, and you continuously live with that idea. And subsequently, when I had my students, we continued that work, but I wanted now to take another step. Okay, so I wanted my students to investigate that can we produce empirical evidence that high or polyploid species or high chromosome number species and low genome size species indeed become invasive. And then I gave this work to three of my PhD students. They did this. We have got some fantastic work out of it, and we found, to our surprise, that in fact these polyploids, they recruit completely different rhizobial microbiome in soil, and they elbow out natives. They pick up more water from the soil, they pick up more nutrients from soil, and they elbow out natives. In fact, last week our paper came in Sustainable Environment and Sustainability. It's a very high impact paper where we have shown that invasive species, exotic invasive species, expend or spend 3 to 8 times more water than native species, which now these have very important bearings on the society. Okay, now all this, particularly Prosopis juliflora, which is almost globally spread, particularly in tropics and semi-arid and arid tropics, from Middle East onward, all these places. Now, these are water stressed countries. And if invasive species are picking up most of your water, you can imagine that how dangerous. So what I have suggested that many times these ecologists, they do a lot of stuff and they fall in love with what they are doing. But then there could be something very different. At that point of time, nobody was looking at polyploidy in endangerment and invasiveness. So I became a kind of a maybe a reason for opening a new door. In this also, we are trying to open a new door that ecology, if they have to look at invasive ecologists, must now turn their attention to the water loss which is being affected by invasive species. And so this is these are some of the works which are continuing. We are continuing our investigations in this area. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Professor, for explaining so many things very beautifully in a very storyline manner. And many congratulations to you for discovering so many things related to endangered species, native species, and invasive species. There are so much of the data, so much of the information that will be remain available for the early career researcher working into this domain. So in this context, we have also explored some of your publication, and we are very keen to um, um, develop our understanding in this context. So here I'm just going to just mention the title of your some of the publication. Even though so many there were so many publication, it is, and that was very hard to pick few of them, but somehow we have just selected. So the first one is the potential effect of ongoing and proposed hydropower development on terrestrial biological diversity in the Indian Himalaya. And the second publication is Dancing on the Roof of World, Ecological Transformation of Himalayan Landscape. And the third one was Climate-Induced Elevational Range Shift and Increase in Plant Species Richness in the Himalayan Biodiversity Epicenter. So we have selected these three. Obviously, most of them are very highly cited work. So can you please put some light on this topics?
Okay, but before I do that, let me tell you something about stories. Uh, uh, when I started teaching early career, at that point of time, I had read a paper in ICOS where an ecologist, very famous ecologist, had almost proscribed. In fact, he had completely said the ecologists must not do anything with stories. They must tell data, empirical data, nothing else. They should not. Then when I started teaching, typically here, when I came here for the first time, 2004-05 in Singapore, and I casually mentioned it to one of my colleague. He said, "Well, science without stories doesn't make any sense." Then I happened to listen to a talk by John Polanyi. He's a Nobel laureate. He got Nobel Prize in chemiluminescence. He's at the University of Toronto. And he says that, well, uh, if you cannot tell a story and only tell data, then data is ephemeral and meaningless. Now, I often, when we talk in my lectures, that suppose I was to ask somebody that what time does this flight leave from Singapore for Boston? So he says, let's say 10:45. At 10:46, that information is meaningless, absolutely meaningless. So he says that then data after some time becomes meaningless. The story remains. He says when a child sees a butterfly, he does not count how many wings it has or how proboscis or something like that. He looks at a whole. So stories are very important. So after that, I always tell my thing as a story. Now listen to these three stories on three questions. The first one, which you were talking about, is this effect on dams. Was it effect on dams on terrestrial ecosystems? This is the conservation biology paper. Is it? Oh, okay. Yes. Now, we were doing two things. One was I was satisfying my scientific curiosity by doing some fundamental work in biology so that, ecologists and biologists would, because if you have to enter annals of, American Academy of Arts and Sciences, then you must do some fundamental work as well. Anyway, that's by the way of joke. So I had that time a student, Manish, he had joined. So I had given him this work that I want to understand how species are distributed across Himalayan gradients. So do all the gradients, do all the elevations have the same number of species, or there's different? Anyway, so though we had some work on that, so these macroecological patterns, we had published a couple of papers on macroecological patterns, but then I also was wanting to know, because the deforestation story I will tell you later, but at the same time, I was wondering that if species are going extinct or there is something, so what is happening in the Himalaya? Then one of the things which caught my eye during our traverse in the Himalaya was these multiple, you know, dams that being built. Now, so I said that, well, what kind of impact they must be having wherever these dams. So I had this fundamental work in terms of macroecological patterns, that how species across taxonomic groups. That means birds, butterflies, fish, plants, animals, primates, whatever. So 8 or 9 taxonomic groups. So we looked at their elevational profiles, how they were distributed. And we got this mid-domain peak. That time, this Rob Colwell's work had just come. That if you were to look at a bounded domain, that means an area which has, let's say it starts with 500 meters and goes up to 5,000 meters, then the maximum number of species will be somewhere between 2,800 to 2,900 meters. So that he called it mid-domain elevational peak, MDE. Now, I said, all right, if that is true, that means maximum number of species are there. Then I asked Manish that, can we also now look at what is happening to endemic species? Now, endemic species has a very different pattern. Endemic species were more towards 4,000 meter, 3,000, 4,000 meter. Anyway, then I asked myself question that now, out of these 292 dams, how many dams are built along the elevational profile? We were so surprised that there was an overlap between highest number of dams and highest number of species. So the highest number of dams in the Himalaya were also located in the same places where highest number of species were there. And most of them happened to be the most dense forests. Now, this is a solid, fundamental scientific work, which apparently has no, application value. But when I plotted the dam data on that, now suddenly it became application value, and that is how it ended up in science. That's how this work came in science. The more detailed work came in conservation biology. Okay, so it had a great, when this paper came in 2013, January, when this paper was out in Science, and subsequently, I think it took some time to Government of India to realize that, I argued with the minister. So he was very courteous. I don't want to be taking names. So he was very courteous. He called me because there is a gentleman by the name of Arnab Goswami. He picked up that paper, and for 2 days, 3 days, he kept on, blurting it out. I was sitting in Times Now studios that time, 9 to 10:30, and, talking about these dams. And there were different chief ministers and ministers and all those guys there. Anyway, but the thing I argued was that if India were to take care of its losses, okay, transmission losses, which range anywhere between 27 to 42%. So if we were to address the transmission losses of electricity, then we would require 27 to 42% less dams. So the minister liked this idea. He said, wow, that's good. I said, yeah, you don't need to build 42% dams. If you simply take care of 42% losses. So that, anyway, so that was one. Second, of course, was, that there is no point always, of course, I'm wedded to Himalaya, I'm wedded to science, that is all right. But I cannot be telling government that close down everything, conserve everything. Conservation biology is everything. Okay, where will electricity come from? Because if you look, I often tell this thing. We are in a 226, nations for which the data of per kilowatt per capita kilowatt hour is available. We are somewhere in 112, 113. If we call ourselves as third largest or fifth largest economy, where are we? Anyway, so therefore we wrote a proposal to the Ministry of Power and Ministry of Environment and Forest that let us have a center of excellence, so that these dams are investigated properly, and that is how we converted this fundamental work into a application work where society. So we did more than 72, 73 of these. We investigated, and wherever we've told them that we should not build dams there because there were some endangered species, there were some. So sometimes they listened, sometimes they did not. They went to courts. So our work was used we published in big journals. At the same time that our work was used by central government, our work was used by courts, several courts, including the highest court in the land. So that's what it becomes a matter of satisfaction that what you had published, you had done in lab, in field, and ultimately it found, it sort of influences society in that way. So this is as far as dams is concerned. Okay. Now coming to your second question, which was about the dancing on the roof of the world, that was a very kind of a flamboyant title, which I thought, because it was a good journal, it was bioscience. So I now wanted to, in 2014, I wanted to write a kind of an integrated account of all, because we were very clear that there is a lot of human pressure across all 8 nations, Himalayan nations, and that means the population density was very high in the northwestern Himalaya, more than the eastern Himalaya, but still very high. And then there was this problem of climate change, which we will come in the next question. Therefore, we wanted to understand that what is happening, what are different stressors doing, and in that we wanted to now not only become rabble rousers, but we wanted to tell that what could be done. So one of the things which we suggested was that if any kind of economic development or any development has to happen, because then it must build on 3 or triumvirate. Okay, one is the geological sensitivity, the geological I call it geological fragility, ecological sensitivity, and cultural aspects. Those 3. So given the carrying capacity of that, based on these 3 things, we should do that. Development should follow keeping these 3 things in mind. Okay, so that was as far as this dancing on roof of the world. Okay, but more of it was ultimately detailed in something, because I have a problem with sustainable development, because I see that it's almost saying that you can have the cake and eat it too. So all this is expounded in this book, which was Life in the, which I wrote while I was at Harvard in 2015-16. So much of it is in this book, and that is as far as the Himalaya and integrated account and sustainability of Himalaya is concerned. Now, there is another thing which I had noted is that, okay, now the climate change issue. Yeah. Now, there is again some stories with it. While we were doing some work on some of these dams between 2005 2006, we were doing some work in Tista Basin in Sikkim. At that point of time, I chanced upon finding a plant which I couldn't identify, though I prided myself that I could identify a large number of Himalayan plants. I couldn't. I brought it back, and subsequently we identified. And when we showed it to somebody at Botanical Survey of India in Kolkata, he said that, why did you find this? I said that anyway, one of my PhD students, Shiva, so he told him that we found it in Lachan. He said, impossible. He said, what impossible? Professor Pandit was with me, so you can ask him. Now, that plant had not been collected for the last 153 years or 133 years, something like that. It was not collected at all. It was not collected because it was found somewhere up to 1100 meters. And where I found it and photographed it was 2700 meters. Now that gave me an idea that has it shifted? Has it shifted north? Okay, so is it finding 1100 to be too warm for it? So it had gone. Then at that point of time, another PhD student of mine, she joined. She was kind of a zealot. She, I think, works for United Nations now. Anyway, so Yasmin, I said, well, do you want to do a difficult thing? She said yes. She accepted the challenge and spent 4 complete years of difficult climb in remote Sikkim mountains, and that too in Lonak Valley, which is one of the most difficult valleys. No roads, nothing. She would climb, and when she would come back after 2 months, 3 months, her skin would be peeling off, black, like that. She would anyway. And so I gave her a data set which was 1848, 1850 data set. I said, I want you to botanize these 2 valleys, Lonak 2 Valley and all that Zemu Valley, and see if these plants occur at those elevations. At the elevations they were actually reported in 1849-50. So we had almost a 200 plus year data. And lo and behold, when after 4 years we analyzed the data, we were pleasantly surprised that most of these species had either gone extinct or had shifted their base anywhere between 800 meters to 11 meters. And now the ones which were very high, now they couldn't go higher because after that there is glacier, so they can't go anywhere. So they would go. So we, at the same time, there was a climatic shift. That was the first empirical evidence of climate shift, because everybody was talking guesstimates, anecdotal thing. मैंने ये देखा, मैंने वो देखा, I saw this, Bull and Cock story. Nobody had this historical data. So we showed in past 200 years, and we were very lucky also that we had some data of those scientists. There are Strachey, Winterbottom, or 2 of them. At that time, they were at every elevation, they would, boil water and tell us the temperature. So we had temperature data set that time, but this time we had small probes where we did. So that and that work was, so that's how we showed that that species were shifting northward and upward. That became that's a very highly cited work, because it's the primary work, and honestly nobody has been able to repeat that kind of work in Himalaya. So they see, there are honeybees, they go up, down, something like that, but actually endemics. Now a lot of people would say that, oh, these plants could be somewhere else also, but we chose only endemic species, those that were there. Therefore, there is no question of those species being anywhere else. So that is how this climatic shift in Himalaya. That's how we did that work with the help of Yasmin. Yep.
Yeah, great contribution, Professor. As you mentioned, serendipity was happened with you, but we must say that that also requires so much of hard work and experience and knowledge in that field. even after that, that is a possible thing. So, exploring further, as you have so much of experience in the Himalayan ecology and biodiversity, so in your opinion, what you have identified, what are the recent research gap into this domain, and what you wanted to inform the new people to explore further into that particular domain to fill the gap?
Well, if I look at the challenges, if I am allowed, if you like, to be a bit critical, not cynical, but
Yeah,
critical.
sure.
The first thing is that there is general lack of appreciation for field research unless it is twitterable or xable, as they call it. Many young scholars would still prefer to be in the lab to do God knows who uses that research, but they would prefer to be working with test tubes and petri dishes. I have nothing against I have nothing against lab research. Lab research is important. I have done a lot of lab research myself. But ecology can neither be practiced nor learnt in labs through, through glasswork or glass tubes. So that is the problem. That is one of the challenges, which I see is a major challenge. There are not youngsters like Yasmin and Manish who are ready to do legwork for months together. A lot of and when both of them are doing now, Manish is an associate professor. He's doing well. He's publishing very very good work and quite. So the second one, of course, has Himalaya's own challenges. So of course there is problem with us, but then there are problems with Himalaya because it is still kind of an unsurmountable barrier, because it puts you to a lot of discomfort and privations. So that is an intrinsic problem with the Himalaya. The third, that barring a few individuals and barring a few institutions, there is not much effort. Much rigorous studies are not done. I do not want to earn more enemies, so I will stop there. So there is an issue with our academics, and that's the reason why why, because why is it that in the last so many years we haven't why haven't Indian ecologists published in Journal of Ecology? There are only 2 papers in Journal of Ecology from India. 3. 2 are from our department, which is environment studies. One Indrajit, one mine, and the third one is Professor that elephant person who is in Indian Institute of Science, Raman Sukumar. Why? So that we must ask this question ourselves. So I would stop there, but there is an urgent need for a whole lot of issues, particularly not only for India, but Asia. Chinese are doing phenomenally well, excellent work. You look at any great journal, there will be at least 2 to 3 papers from one of the labs or one of their institutions. So whether it is ecology or it's taxonomy or it's population genetics or paleobiology or geobiological studies, and their correlation with past and future climates, very little work. Nobody wants to. Yes, Birbal Sahni Institute, there is Vandana did some, who was the director of paleobotanist. She published some excellent work on Dipterocarpaceae, one of her students, what's her name, Dipti Bansal or something. They got a science paper. So, but generally speaking, that there is only, you can count these individuals. Look at the size of our nation. Look at the size of Himalaya. And look at the kind of work that gets published, very little. So that is primarily my grouse or cynicism, that kind of thing. So intrinsic as well as our own challenges, unfortunately.
Yeah. Thank you, Professor, for raising your concern and opinion. And yes, the fieldwork is really very important, and I hope this will be a kind of learning opportunity, especially for the early career research, to do more and more research work related to the fieldwork. Considering your so much of experience, since you are also a part of so many national and international projects. So, in this context, in the field of ecology, biodiversity conservation, and sustainability, what is your vision and plan to achieve sustainable future that is ultimately linked to the United Nations?
Hmm. Well, I don't claim to be an expert. I am still learning the ropes. Uh, uh, you know, my vision, because much of my work is Himalaya related, so I would restrain myself or restrict myself to Himalaya. Much of this work I have envisioned it in two of my articles in Nature. I got lucky. Actually, I was very lucky. I don't know. They just got it in. So in Nature, one was in 2013 and one was in 2020, Worldview articles. So I have, discussed a whole lot of things that we need to do in terms of international collaboration and coordination and networking to have answers. Well, after all, what we are doing, we want to have, I want to have a safe Himalaya. I want to have a peaceful Himalaya. And if that is true, it will never happen if India and China do not collaborate. It will never happen if India and Pakistan, India and Afghanistan, India and Bhutan, India and Nepal don't collaborate. They must. We were surprised. In fact, while I was, and there is the third. So these were two, papers, and one of the examples I gave in these two papers in Nature is that one is, of course, is natural hazards. Now, take example of natural hazards. We know that Himalaya is prone to natural hazards. We know it. Therefore, and we have so much of technology available now. So why shouldn't we deploy? Why shouldn't we share and make a network of scientists? Indian and Chinese scientists hardly collaborate. Imagine we are neighbors. And Himalaya, cemented. Some student was telling me some time back, yeah, it separates China and India. I said, yes. But that is the only connection between the two. On one hand, it is just like, once you cut a cloth and then you stitch it, the stitch, it separates also, but it stitches them also together. So Himalaya is playing the dual role. So it separates the two, but at the same time, it stitches them both together. So how is world sustainability possible? So in our recent paper, which published last month it's a sister publication of it's a new journal called NPG Biodiversity, where I call it conservation. So conservation international diplomatic conferences, because it's a kind of it's a neutral tool. Nobody will say that, oh, you have it's not a militaristic solution. It's a nice solution. So I have decided, in my 2020 paper, I had suggested Himalaya one nation, one reserve. So honor, HONOR. Okay. And in this paper, I'm arguing that we should extend this to Hangduan, Tibet, and Himalaya, the three regions. And it should be jointly sort of managed by India, China, Bhutan, Nepal. You can do politics, things like that. So if we have to find answers to major climatic upheavals, we must collaborate. If we have to find major solutions to to major climatic events, floods, disasters, natural hazards, we need to collaborate, we need to cooperate, we need to share data. Very, very critical. If this is not done, it's not possible. India cannot do it alone. China cannot do it alone. Bangladesh cannot do it alone. Pakistan and all these cannot, they cannot do it alone. So this is important, that they must collaborate and share data. Very important.
Yeah.
More scientists should, more Indian Chinese and Indian Pakistanis, Indian, Bhutanese, and they should collaborate. They should. Yeah. So I am currently leading an international project where our colleagues from University of Massachusetts, Harvard University, people from France, CNRS, there's some Free University Berlin, University of Amsterdam. So I'm leading this project. We're trying to look at, evolutionary divergence of Himalayan flora. That what happened? How was climate responsible for all this diversity and endemism? Why are Western Himalayas have less endemics than Eastern Himalaya? Why Hengduan have more than Eastern Himalaya? So we have given an workable mechanistic model. So that's the kind of work. But national thing, I'm again very sorry that Ministry of Environment and Forests. Now, I don't know how to say it without sounding bitter, but imagine that a person who inarguably or arguably in the last 3 to 4 decades has single-handedly written largest number and the most profound works on Himalaya. I am not part of G.B. Pant Institute of Himalayan Environment Development. Never. I was never on their governing body. Ministry of Environment and Forest would never find. So national plan. Once some years back, they did invite me, and when they were funding some projects. So when I found that they were almost throwing that money into Ganga, I told them, what are you doing? These people don't know anything about this. Why are you funding them? So give this to NGOs, they will do some good work. Some good will come out of it. So after that, they didn't call me for the next meeting. I'm sorry that there are India runs, and good for them. So it's fine. Harvard University will find me worth, awarding. American Academy of Arts and Sciences will fund me, but Ministry of Environment does not want me to go to G.B. Pant Institute, even to tell them. It was I don't know how Vandana got me to do that. A lot of people were pleasantly surprised when she asked me. Anyway, that is gossip, so I don't want to get into that. Yeah.
Thank you so much for explaining the importance of the collaboration and transdisciplinary research. So in this context, many times we have understood that there is a importance of the traditional knowledge. So can you please elaborate the traditional ecological knowledge system of the local communities in the Himalayan region? So that can be very much helpful for the conservation related aspect, and the thing that you have mentioned related to collaboration. So can you please explain the importance of the different stakeholders, right from the government, NGOs, and local communities in the conservation related aspect, conservation of biodiversity?
Okay, so I had taken down some notes, but then I am a typical teacher. When somebody asks question, I just impromptu. Okay. Now, as far as traditional knowledge, human communities, you know what? I'm particularly concerned about human communities living in the high highland Himalaya. And because they will be most seriously impacted by climate change. Because their lives and livelihoods, both, they are under threat. Because base of that pyramid, is undergoing a severe. I often give this example of Tibetan culture. Okay, now this is one of our works which Manish published in 2019. Now, a large number of woody elements were getting into these Himalayan meadows. I will link it with conservation. Okay, now Himalayan meadows have the largest number of medicinal plants. And given the circumstances that there is hardly any healthcare system in those elevations, so these people depend on those medicinal plants, local medicinal plants. So second thing is that in the even that grasses, they shift even a kilometer or 800 meters up. That will increase more drudgery for women, because it is women who collect grasses and other things, or fodder for their animals. Okay, so the drudgery is going to increase more, which is now specifically for Tibetan culture. The grasses are being replaced by woody elements in those meadows. Now, yak doesn't eat those woody elements, cannot. So if those grasses and sedges, which are the fodder of yak, if that goes, then entire culture, Tibetan culture and that highland culture goes for a toss, because yak is used for plowing. They use its dung for fuel. They use its dung for manure. They use its meat. They use its fat for burning in oil lamps in their monasteries, and also for their cooking oil. They use its horns for making combs. They use its fur or hair for making tents. There's not one thing that yak's body is not used for. Now imagine if the foundation or the basic pyramid on which yak stands is gone, and yak is gone, this entire culture or community would be gone for a toss. So for 20,000 years, they have been there. Complete annihilation. So this is what will, and with them will go the traditional knowledge. I briefly talked about the medicinal plants. Now nobody has made any, there is no conspiracy. It is somehow that most of these endemic plants happen to be in these meadows. And most of these meadows have medicinal plants. And in absence of a healthcare system, local people depend on that. And it is not only that we'll lose medicinal plants, we will also lose that traditional knowledge about those medicinal plants. That is also, that equally is very scary.
In this context, what do you think the role of the different stakeholders, maybe the people from the government sector, NGO, or any industry, how they can take participation for the conservation related things?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, you were saying something, Saurabh?
Yeah. I was actually extending my question and seeking your response for the transdisciplinary research. The people from the different NGO, maybe near the Himalayan region, or people from the government sector, how they can work and how they can provide input for the conservation related efforts.
Yes, that's a very important question. Now, local communities, of which NGOs are a part, they are important stakeholders. In fact, the most important, because they are the first responders. We must never forget that they are the first responders to climate change or any kind of, upheaval that is there. As I said already, that it will enhance women's drudgery. Unfortunately, because if the grass and fodder moves up, then women are in more trouble in these regions. Because men are either out or they don't work somehow. I don't know why. But but more importantly, what is a big challenge is that there will be now increasing events of these GLOF events, glacial lake outburst flood events, extreme climate events like cloudburst and things like that, and they are on the increase. Now, particularly when you are building a large number of dams, it has become all the more important to involve local NGOs for 2 or 3 things, briefly. One, in the event of a dam break, like it has happened. It's not that it has not happened. It has happened in the last couple of years. Okay, in Rishi Ganga, Dholi Ganga, it has happened. Now, so shouldn't we, as I said earlier, we deploy the modern, the modern information and communication technology, and help these NGOs. Okay, so ask them to participate in bringing not only the awareness but also disseminating information quickly. Because by the time this person somewhere 50, 80, 100 kilometers down would know, by the time damage would have been already done. Okay, so if you have now drones, if you have now, if you have these now mobile phones, you have all these kind of apps and things like that, you can disseminate the knowledge and you can save not only human lives, but human property and things like that. So therefore, the second thing is, they would be fantastic, collaborators in producing citizen science, because most people cannot. I, for example, did, but then not many people may not. So why can't we have these local NGOs helping us to collect certain data, real good data? And we are data deficient. We are a data deficient country overall. So get these NGOs to become citizen scientists and get your hardcore, excellent data. Get their help in preventing natural disasters. Get their help in, in sort of disseminating knowledge about conservation and things like that. The third thing, of course, is that, which I have already discussed in my book, is one of the things which we need to do. In fact, Peter Raven and Professor Bawa, in their foreword to my book, have written that some fundamental principles of geology and ecology, okay, must be part of the primary and school curricula in a very, very simplified manner, so that a child knows, okay, that the medium on which he or she is standing, or on which they are standing, has certain geological fragility. Okay, so earthquakes will come, and when they grow up, so they are almost prepared. They will not go and run for contracts for small roads. Sir, road ka contract de dijiye, those kind of things. They would know that. So we need to fundamentally change NEP, everything. These are national programs. That's good. You do that. But locally, a Himalayan child should know what a thrust is, what a fault is, what happens, how does an earthquake come, what happens, why does this, what does, what is a landslide? some things, so that he knows by the time he is in higher secondary, he knows that this is what I should expect here. So these are 4 or 5 things which I envision for Himalaya. Uh, well, this is what has often come to my mind.
So, considering the mitigation part and the restoration of the degraded ecosystem, especially in the Himalaya region, so what you experience and what you think that what are the important challenges and opportunities related to that, especially related to the restoration of the already degraded ecosystem? So, what is your opinion?
Okay, you see, the challenges we have already discussed in so
Yeah,
many
so
other
many
words,
things.
that the challenges are that Himalaya is geologically vulnerable, ecologically very fragile, and I must say, socio-culturally very sensitive. Okay,
Yes.
because it so happened that our gods decided all of them go live there. Okay, they wanted to run away from humans, but humans are now running away there. So to my mind, that's one of the biggest challenge. I think too many people going in a short period of time. Okay, so I think that both, tourism, I think is a. I have there was a program here. In fact, possibly maybe 2 of my colleagues, they were not very happy. They were running a ecotourism kind of program, and I said, don't do that. Don't do that. Himalaya is already too much under tourism. Too much. It is, if there is anything called over tourism, I would put it under over tourism. This is insane, almost. So we should de-touristize Himalaya. It already too much. And you know what has happened? What happened in 2013? What happened later on? Every year, then people die. So many things happen. Then your response is you count body bags, which is sad. What can you do? What can NRF, whatever they are called, NDRF, natural disaster, what can they do? Now go that Joshimat, that entire thing is sinking. What it brings.
Yeah.
So biggest challenge is the intrinsic vulnerability, fragility, sensitivity of Himalaya. And the moment it crosses the threshold carrying capacity, when let me say it, there's no problem in saying it. When Shankaracharya must have gone uh, to Kedarnath, he must have taken 10, 12, 13, 14, 15 people with him. Now, if at one point of time, 30, 40,000 people go there, and then there is a cirque lake or a glacial lake up there, and if it by chance there is too much of rain, and that. Now, these lakes will burst, because that is, and again, our work where we had shown in 2008, 2009, we said that we have surveyed a large number of these lakes. Even from satellite images, their volumes are increasing. In last 30 years, their volumes have increased. Now, most of these lakes are dammed by loose moraine. The moment water column, because when the rain comes at a very high speed and in a short period of time, then that lake, that volume becomes so high, it puts so much pressure on this, and then there is a burst. And when there is lake burst, so whatever comes in its wake, it just takes it. It does not differentiate between a mongoose and or a marmot or a human being. It just takes it. So you have to operate within those challenges. There is no problem in telling people that, well, you want to go, you go. So many people will go, you come back, the next batch will go. So do something today. You can. You ultimately, it's not like Prayag. It's not like Hardwar, where you can bring 15 crore people or something like that. Himalaya has very low carrying capacity. Because Himalaya, if there is any God, but anyway, I'm sorry. It's made like that. That everything has to come down under gravity. A stone has to roll, a human being will roll. Whatever you put on it, it will roll down on its own. You get my point? So therefore, it has low carrying capacity. So all the operations in the Himalaya have to be within the carrying capacity, the same safe, minimum safe limits. So operate within those safe. This is the biggest challenge. Once we solve that, then there is no problem.
Thank you so much, Professor, for explaining so many things and typical things in a very simple language. And finally, the one of my favorite question: what is your message for the early career researcher working in the field of ecology, biodiversity conservation, climate change, and sustainability? What do you want to? What is your key message to them?
So now you are making me a guru or sadguru or whatever guru. I am not a guru. I'm a, I'm a simple student of, simple student of biology. And if I have any message for the fellow researchers, in fact, there is a wonderful story. My teacher, Professor Virendra Kumar, told me. Well, when I was writing this book, when I was going to Harvard, and at that point of time, he was not feeling very well. So he came to the department. He sort of sent a word. He said, "Come out." He was outside in his car. So he told me. He said, "Yes, you have become a fellow of Indian National Science Academy. You are writing a book for Harvard University Press. You are going to Harvard and things like that. अब अपना दिमाग खराब मत करना." So मैंने कहा, "Sir, why are you saying it? Why do you say it?" He said, "Listen, I was a dean and professor of environmental sciences." He said, "Listen what I'm telling you. All what you are doing, I'm telling you, it is a rin. Rin in Hindi is debt. This is a rin which you are repaying to your teachers, to your parents, to your elders, to your students, to your colleagues. They have together synchronously contributed to what you are. Therefore, you are paying that rin, you are paying that debt back. Okay? And then after that he said, now my journey is complete, I can go. I said, "Sir, why should you say this?" Exactly after 1 week, he passed. So if we think that what we are doing in our life is the debt which we are paying to our teachers, to others, from we have learned. So therefore, we are all learning. I always learn when I go to class. I come out a much more learned man than when I have entered the class. Well, that may be true for even students. That's a different issue. Okay, so that is part one. Part two is, I will go back, that we must resort to storytelling in science. Storytelling in science is so important, because if you do not tell the story, student will never ever get interested, because the story has to be a Hitchcockian story. He must feel enthused. He must feel, wow, what next? What next? What is coming next? So when you show him the full, then when he is in class for 2 hours or 3 hours, he has come out. Otherwise, he can go and watch a movie, or a Amitabh Bachchan movie, or a Shah Rukh Khan movie, or some other movie. If he has come to your class for three hours, he must find it worthy. So a researcher must, so same thing with the researcher. When he goes to the field or goes to his lab, whatever he is doing afresh, he should come out with a story, a full story, and then tell the world. Because it is stories that have a life, as Walter Benjamin would say. Okay, stories have life. They remain even after me, after even the storyteller. So that is, that's for the youngsters. Sadly, the kind of teachers which I have had, I am not that such a great teacher. And I don't know what about the ones who we have taught. So we have possibly, I don't know, we have let down this generation, because we need very, very good teachers. They tell you the full thing. They tell you the most complicated science in a story fashion, so that you find it. Now, when I was giving a lecture somewhere at one of the Ivy League universities, so I sort of told them that I have to tell you this. I will tell you the beginning, the middle, and the end. This is how I started it. This is what I did, and this is what I found, and this is what I think. So every researcher, a young researcher, must ask him or herself a question: that what is my story? What is the story which I'm going to tell the world? And my story is, whenever I found something new, because when I challenged in this paper, which is under the review, I challenged that biology is not the main thing here. It is the climate and geology which are conspiring to make species. Species are coincidental to the whole process. They may be there, they may not be there. So therefore, next time I go to the Himalaya, go there, very quietly tell this thing in Himalaya's air that, look here, I now know what badmashi you do. I have known your one secret at least. One secret at a time. That is what all of us must do. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor, for explaining so many things in a very storyline manner and sharing so much of the information, knowledge, data sharing, so much of your journey in the different context. So thank you so much for inspiring us, providing so much of knowledge to us.